Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Braverman, and I will be presenting today on HR 2759, the Department of Defense Climate Resiliency and Readiness Act, which I will refer to going forward as the DoD Climate Act. I would like to take this moment to thank my team, Haley and Andrew, for putting this presentation together, and to everyone in our working group for their support and research throughout this workshop. So on the agenda today, I will introduce the nature of the public policy problem threatening the DoD. I will then discuss how the DoD Climate Act intends to address this problem and follow with our proposed program design for the first year of the DoD Climate Act. I will conclude this presentation with a summary of our program and share our next steps for the remainder of the semester. So let's begin with the introduction to the nature of the public policy problem. The DoD Climate Act addresses the threat climate change poses to the Department of Defense and U.S. military readiness to respond to natural disasters. Each year, climate change-related disasters, including extreme temperatures, hurricanes, wildfires, and drought, cause damage to DoD infrastructure, which requires billions of dollars, resources, and time to repair. The DoD itself is a major contributor to climate change, as it is one of the world's largest greenhouse gas emitters. Over 1,700 DoD sites are currently facing climate threats. Therefore, it is in the interest of national security that the DoD adapt and mitigate to climate change. The DoD Climate Act was introduced to both houses of Congress in May of 2019. As one of the bill's sponsors, Elizabeth Warren, has stated, climate change is a national security threat, and adapting to it is essential to maintaining our military readiness. Now I will discuss the solutions proposed by the DoD Climate Act. The DoD Climate Act outlines three major approaches for the DoD's response to climate change. The first, the DoD Climate Act requires all non-operational installations of the DoD to improve energy efficiency and achieve net zero energy consumption by 2030. The second goal, the DoD must manage and assess the physical risks climate change poses to its installations. And lastly, the Act seeks to change the economic markets surrounding the defense industry to be more climate conscious through DoD budgeting, spending, and contracting. The approaches contained within the DoD Climate Act must align with the major goals of preparing the DoD and its infrastructure to withstand and adapt to climate change. Mitigation measures in the bill include increasing energy efficiency, investing in and increasing the use of clean energy sources, and conducting collaborative research to shift to a decarbonized economy. Adaptation measures in the bill include increasing the resiliency of military bases, achieving energy security, and conducting assessments and reports to track the program's progress. I will now discuss our program design, which will take place within the first year of following enactment. There are three major elements of our program design. These include changes to the institutional structure that will affect the DoD's internal processes, mitigation elements that seek to reduce the DoD's carbon emissions and reliance on traditional energy sources, and adaptation elements that prepare the DoD for the effects of climate change and seek to increase resilience. Within the first 180 days of enactment, the position of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy and Climate Resiliency will be established to oversee the program's implementation. Equivalent positions will be created in each branch of the military in order to ensure that there is adherence across the entirety of the DoD. The DoD Climate Act requires climate-conscious budgeting. The program would allocate funds dedicated specifically to climate-related risks in the DoD's annual budget proposal. Performance management will include biannual reports to track the progress towards the major goals of the Act. Assessments will be measured by the Climate Vulnerability Risk Assessment tool, which I'll go into greater detail on in later slides. Mitigation will begin by immediately reducing energy consumption at fixed DoD installations. The Department of Defense consumes 77% of the entire federal government's energy budget, and 30% of DoD carbon emissions are from non-operational sources. A recent assessment showed that less than 2% of DoD facilities met standards for being energy efficient. Through simple and fairly low-cost improvements, such as renovations to heating and cooling systems, reliance on energy-efficient automated and task lighting, and careful power management at workstations can quickly and easily decrease its energy use and carbon footprint. In the first year of the program, there will be significant investment in research and development of renewable energy sources, with a primary focus on developing hybrid and renewable source microgrids. This is essential for achieving the DoD Climate Act's long-term goal of achieving net zero energy by 2030. Collaboration and equity will be at the foundation of this program. The DoD will work with Black communities, tribal nations, and historically Black colleges and universities in the planning, research, and implementation of this program, as well as with local communities, both in working towards net zero and collaborating on adaptation efforts. Adaptation efforts will begin by taking inventory of what resiliency measures have already been implemented by the DoD sites, and then implementing resiliency measures at sites with the highest climate vulnerability. This will include actions such as raising buildings to prevent flooding. Within the first 6 months of the program, a climate vulnerability risk assessment tool will be developed in consultation with other federal agencies to be used to determine how climate risks affect the military's operations, systems, sites, and capabilities. The Climate Task Force will be established within the first year of this program. This task force has 3 major objectives, which are to coordinate and promote interagency cooperation, provide training on the implementation of the bill, and ensure minimal negative social and environmental impacts on all operations. The task force will include the newly appointed Secretaries of Energy and Climate Resiliency from each branch of the military, and as well as representatives from other government agencies and research institutions. In designing this program, we have worked to consider the impact it will have on current operations of the DoD, as well as the effectiveness of its elements in meeting the overall objectives of the bill. We have also assessed the political and financial feasibility of this program. The adaptation measures proposed have broad bipartisan political support, which will protect the strength of the program as more politicized activities, such as working towards net zero energy, are simultaneously conducted. In terms of the financial feasibility, funding will be accessible through the National Defense Authorization Act. There will be a significant cost at the start of this energy transition, but the maintenance and disaster recovery costs will be reduced over the long term. Thus far, we have discussed the implementation schedule for the first year of enactment. These first steps are necessary if we are to achieve the Act's major goals by the turn of the decade. In conclusion, the first year of this program will focus on implementing institutional changes, investing in mitigation technologies, and adapting infrastructure and strategies to climate change. By implementing initiatives with high rates of return, including energy efficiency and climate adaptation measures, significant progress on the DoD Climate Act's overall goals will be made within the first year. This will make way for research and development of renewable energy and hybrid microgrid technologies. The DoD's investment in the research and development of these technologies has the potential to transform the entire U.S. energy economy, given the magnitude of the DoD's presence in the U.S. energy market. Our next steps will focus on the DoD Climate Act's organizational structure, budget, timeline, and performance management to ensure a successful first year of the program. Thank you so much for your time, and I will now open the forum for questions.
Nice job, thank you. Any questions from the class?
You guys can raise your hands or type them in the chat box.
Are there any questions? Okay,
Oh, we have one question from Charlie.
okay, Charlie.
Hi, Sarah. That was a great presentation. I just have one quick question for you, which is, how accurate do we know the extent of the operational greenhouse gas emissions within the DoD? I know that in the Paris Agreement, states weren't required to disclose the amount of emissions. So are these approximate, or are we actually able to derive these from fuel purchases or things like that? Or how are we going to be able to monitor like the decrease in operational greenhouse gas emissions as we go forward?
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Charlie. So currently there are I'm not quite sure the technicalities behind their measurements, but I do know that there are current processes for measuring those kind of emissions, especially from non-operational sources, which for those who are unsure what that means, that's from fixed military base installations. So we know where the DoD is getting its its energy from, and then we can measure from those sources the emissions from there. But that's why this bill has proposed the development of the climate vulnerability and risk assessment tool, so that that tool can be used for measuring each military's fixed installation emissions. That way we can move towards a less carbon intense market. And if that doesn't answer your question fully, I'm happy to send you more information. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Other questions?
We have a question from Griffin.
Okay, Griffin.
Hey, Sarah, that was great. I'm curious about whether you feel hopeful that this sort of action can happen within the Department of Defense.
That's a really good question. And thank you. I think it's a good point, because I think when we hear, the environmental protection, especially when it comes to military operations, given that the military has such a big carbon footprint, is it actually possible is a good question. I think that there is a lot of hope, because there are many people within the military who are very interested in this, because this is a security issue, right? We are already seeing many bases that are affected by climate change disasters. So it's in their best interest to be working towards climate resiliency. And I think that there is hope for it. If this bill does not become approved, which currently it is just waiting in committee, these are all options that can be applied in other areas without a passing of an act. But we're hopeful that this will happen within the next year.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, well, Sarah, very nice job. And we're going to